So don't let them steal your light. Don't let them break your stride. There's light on the other side. You'll see all the rain clouds follow me. It's a revolution. Gonna make you out tonight. It's a revolution.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Women in Athletics. Today I have Ikaika Dowsett, who is actually my old ballroom dancing instructor. He is also the coach for Team 106. He has produced some of the most national champions on the West Coast, and he has been a coach for both Berkeley and Stanford's ballroom dancing teams. So I'm really excited to have him on today's show with me. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks. Happy to be here, and hope you don't mind that I'm sipping coffee so I can be the most alert for this riveting discussion.
Absolutely. So tell a little bit of background about yourself, how you got started with ballroom dancing.
Yeah, so my start was, I think, a pretty common story, at least. There was a girl. I was in high school, or I was just graduating high school. Just after high school. Well, so in high school, okay, so I started dancing at a younger age. I have a grandmother who's sort of a somebody fancy in the hula world. I'm from Hawaii. And so I was always sort of exposed to that at a young age. And it wasn't the coolest thing in when I was a kid to be doing a hula. It's really cool now, actually. It's got some legs under it, but back then it was, forget dancing as a boy in general back then, but even then doing hula was still not cool. So growing up as rap and hip hop was going through its golden age, let's say, as some people like to say. So I started getting into breakdancing and pop and lock and a lot of what was called, street dancing back then. And I really liked it. It was a good crowd for me to fit in. It kept my competitive edge going. I did a lot of athletics, surfing, soccer, football, baseball, volleyball. A lot of active stuff as a kid. And then as I started getting later on in my teens, my asthma got really, really bad. So I gave up a lot of that super athletic stuff and got into more dancing, because I could kind of dance as much as I like and then get off. Martial arts too, a little martial arts. And then I think it was right after high school. I forget the exact year now. So I met this girl, and she was long story short, there's this girl. She's like the homecoming queen, very popular, very compelling, let's say. And I didn't really have a way to talk to her, I guess you could say. And I'd run into one of her family members, and her aunt had told me that she does ballroom dancing. And I thought, okay, well, and that she needed like a partner. And so I thought, well, I can spin on my head. So let me go figure out this stuff. This is for old people, right? So I went to this little group class that was kind of near my town, and taught by these wonderful older people. And I mean, I was the youngest person there by far. Everyone, the minimum age there was like 45. So I took some classes, got ready, and got some what I thought were some pretty good skills. So I can finally call this girl up and be like, hey. So I did like 3 group classes. I thought I was good already. Called her up and I'm like, hey, I hear you do ballroom dancing. I'm thinking about doing some practice or whatever, or taking some classes. Do you need a partner? I hear you need a partner. And she's like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And so we went to some classes, and I thought, good, this is going to work out. And she was so good. She was way better than I was. But I kind of liked it, and I thought it was a good way to spend time with this girl. And we started practicing and taking some classes a couple times a week. Eventually I think we had a little romantic dalliance for a very short time, and realized that as dance partners we were cool. As romantic partners, it was less cool. And so that lasted about a month and kind of exploded. And then But I had been bit by the sort of the serious dancing thing bug at that time, and I'd taken a few private lessons, and so I thought I'm going to keep doing this, even though I wasn't dancing with that girl. So went on to find some other local partners still in Hawaii, and then from some people close to me, they're like, you could probably do this if you like it. So why don't you get the hell out of here? You're never going to find a partner in Hawaii. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know anything about it, but probably one of the big cities on the mainland, New York, LA, or San Francisco. And so I had a family member she was in Vallejo, and on a map, it looks very close to San Francisco. So I thought I'll go there. And so I moved to Vallejo and, put an ad up on the internet, found a partner, started competing, did really well by all measures early on. And one thing led to another, and had a successful amateur career, turned pro, was competing as a pro and teaching. I was lucky to have a pretty solid student base after a while, because they kind of want to know what was the secret sauce. I seem to be doing a little bit better than most people, quicker than them. And it was shortly after that I started coaching a group of kids that turned out to be probably one of the most successful group of kids in the Bay Area in the last 10, 15 years. One of which was Miss Eliana. And sadly our time was limited because you went off to win all those medals behind you. But and that went on. So I kept coaching, competing as a pro, realized that I was doing well as a pro. I was good, but my knack for coaching and teaching and doing like the day-to-day work with the athletes was what I was better at, and I liked it more. So I retired a little early. I retired at 31, 32. And just went into coaching full time, and I've had a blessed career. Not even since then. I mean, the whole time I was competing, it was still great, but pretty successful, I have to say, since then. So, well, you were always sort of, extra talented, sort of in everything. I should tell a story. So I used to have this. Yeah, I don't want to embarrass you, but Eliana was particularly quiet, I think. Or I don't know if it was just around me, but she was very quiet, very focused. But physically, one of the more, I'm sorry to all the other kids who are listening, if they are listening, but just physically one of the more able kids. I'm not sure if it was talent or you were doing all this other training, right? So, but I used to put all the kids in the group class through this little balancing exercises and competitions, where they would have to, balance on the tip of their heel. We wear a heel. And Eliana would win almost nearly every time. Even the boys who had a much thicker heel, on the bottom of their shoes, and you're balancing like a stiletto almost and still beating them. So that was interesting to see. And I mean, it was sad that you moved on in a way, but you were clearly had a leg up, I assume, on the competition going into that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was my gymnastics past too, because I started with artistic gymnastics and then kind of went into rhythmic. But I always figured my balance was terrible. Like I had a much easier time balancing on the ice on skates than I would just like walking down the street. I was like, let me skate. Yeah.
I'm curious why you got burnt out.
I think I really started to feel it that last season. And as you progress higher in the ranks, there's more at stake, you get more nervous for competitions. I was always pretty good at dealing with my nerves off the ice and on the ice, and I just felt like the higher up I got, I was still okay with handling them like on the ice during my program. I could like take everything off my mind, but it was before I stepped on the ice, I would just get like this overwhelming sensation of just like I need to cry. Like it wasn't even like, it was fear in a sense, but not even nerves. Like I just like needed to like bawl out crying. Like I don't even know how to explain it. And it was just from there where I stopped enjoying competitions, because that preparation was just so mentally and physically exhausting.
What was the conversation you were sort of having with yourself besides like I need to cry? I mean, was it like I'm gonna lose? I'm not gonna win in the way I want. This isn't worth it. I hate something. What was the narrative like, if you know?
My one of like the biggest fears, I think there was two. One was of course that we would mess something up, um, things don't go well in practice, you kind of get that like sensation, and then you're like, I can't mess up. This is the time where I can't mess up. But I also had this very big mental block of I'm gonna get tired. I'm gonna get so tired. I'm not gonna be able to push on. I'm not gonna be able to continue. I'm not gonna be able to do my best. And
You mean like like in stamina?
yeah,
Yeah.
physically. And I would work with a sports psychologist on this, and he was like, "You've done it before. You know you're not gonna die. Like, what are you so afraid of?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I can't get through a program, and I'm just like terrified of being tired, and I'm terrified of messing up, and I'm terrified of messing up because I'm being tired. So it was kind of this like tumbleweed effect.
So when you were terrified, is it just the sinking feeling of as it creeps up on you, the tiredness, the exhaustion, the fatigue is creeping up on you. You now know you're not in your optimal state anymore,
Yeah,
but you still got to do stuff. So that feeling in and of itself can be scary, right? Because you're like, and especially in stuff you're doing like dangerous stuff, and if you're not able to do your part or whatever, you could get hurt. But I mean, aside from that, is there another element of fear of, I get this a lot, fear of disappointing my parents? I hear more often than not people like my own dancers are scared of disappointing me, which is weird because I tell them, well, I'm always disappointed in you, so I'm just kidding. I don't say that, but it's none of this from my side as a coach. I don't really know that in the process of working together, these weird sort of expectations and hopes and dynamics between um, either the result itself or just the quality of the performance of the athlete, that sense of failure is also tied to that, and the relationships with people, and not just I wanted this, I didn't get it, and I'm because like what's to be scared of? You kind of know the result will be whatever it is, but there's another charge to it. Oftentimes, I'm not sure if you.
yeah. When I was younger, I think my initial fear was disappointing my parents. As I kind of went along and felt more independent, I think it was more of disappointing myself or my partner, because when you're in a team sport, ice dancing, ballroom dancing, it's not just you. I mean, you can do your best, but if the other person messes up, there's nothing you can do about it, and like your performance just goes downhill.
I know. Yeah.
It's kind of that fear of like, what are they gonna do? Like, are they gonna mess it up for me too? Like,
Yeah.
just you worrying about yourself. But
Would you rather so let's say you go out there and your results guaranteed, you're going to get third, right? So you don't get to win. Would you rather be the one messing up or the one who didn't mess up?
I'd rather be the one who did not mess up.
I see. Because that's different, right? Because now you're pissed.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I imagine you're disappointed in a way, right? Even that's weird because you know that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like it's not like a super big surprise, but yeah, I always wonder about these sort of things. Like we go in knowing what the likelihoods and risks are, and even though it's low, we're still like, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah. But in that last stage, I think whenever we would compete and if something went wrong, the first instinct was to just hug your partner at the end of the program. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And then you look at the coach. You always just look at the coach. You look for what their face is. They're just looking at you straight faced. You're like, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
gonna hear it. Like I messed up big time. But they're like smiling and clapping. You're like, oh, maybe it wasn't really that bad.
Yeah. So then you have the other situation. You won, coach unhappy. Didn't win, however, coach is happy with your performance.
I think my coach's happiness is very important. I
Mm, yeah.
think a coach is like a family figure when you've been with them for so long and gone through so many hardships, and
Yeah.
important moments. And I mean, if I won, like, cool. I mean, if you're upset about like a little thing that I messed up, I can fix it later. But if I didn't do so well and my coach is still happy with me, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, we can just work on things, we can improve. Like, we're all happy. Like, that's fine.
Mm. Yeah. We don't even, I mean, on my side, I never know when has this happened. At some point I met you, we started training, and at some point, my opinion, I mean, in a way, you're coming for my opinion, right? Because that's you're here for the feedback on your performance. But like, when did my opinion become the thing, and not more so maybe than the result?
Is it weird thinking about it in that sense that you're this like all high and mighty figure for some people?
I'm trying to be practical about it and know that for some people, that, whether you want to call it fear or respect or whatever it is, they push harder because of that. They're more willing to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a lot of what we're trying to do as coaches is, in the time we have, we can only do so much, right? And I think the good coaches try to equip the athlete to be as productive as they can every hour or every unit of time of training that they have on their own. And if you can, in a sense, not just give them a fish, but teach them to fish,
Mm-hmm.
so that their output can be something, 20% higher, on their own time, that over the course of a year is massive. That's the difference between being in a final and not, or winning and not, and it's the, so when, to your question, when the athlete has this sort of view of you as this, all knowing, and of course you're just as fallible as the next person, you do just as much dumb stuff, sometimes even more. But when they view you in the field like that, then it's easier to get the buy-in and the follow through of what they do on their own time, because they're not in a basic constant state of skepticism and like, do you really know what you're talking about here, right? They just trust it and they just do it, right? And so probably because I can draw some correlation over the years between the athletes who have done the largest percentage of what I've suggested that they do are typically the most successful, then I think like, well, okay, so if one of the things that does that is the athlete having this view of me as, I know everything, or they're very concerned at wanting the coach to give a stamp of approval on their performance, that's helpful in that way. I think, like most things, there's a downside to that, right? In that if too often I show disapproval or disappointment, right, then that can demoralize them to the point where they just give up, and you don't want to do that. So, and then it's a game of like, well, do I be honest? And a lot of it is in delivery. Like, I know a lot of coaches where they feel that the screaming and the very emotional response and like, it's almost, to me it looks like a bit of theater. It's like, because I care this much, I have to respond with this sort of,
Yeah.
big response and emotion. And maybe it's productive in some ways for some people because they feel like the coach really cares, but I'm not entirely sure if it's the best thing for it to be, as much as it often is for people, and that it can really crush them if you're not careful with this sort of feedback you give, right? Because, and that scales into other things, right? Like, if someone has full trust in you as coach, and you give them some sort of advice, maybe an offhanded comment like, oh, your movement looks a little heavy today, just the way you're moving, maybe misinterpreted as you look heavy, maybe misinterpreted as, oh, you're fat, oh, I'm going to go home and starve myself, or something like that, right? And then it never gets brought up. It was a sort of a comment. I wasn't even talking about that. And then next year you hear, well, you told me I was fat last year, and so now I've been, I have this problem of sorts, and all that, right? So it's hard. And as the person who's sort of in charge, the coach is sort of a manager too, you have to almost know what the dynamics are going to be with that individual person before they're established, because you don't want things to go into a bad place and then and it's very difficult to fix. So you really have to watch your words. They're impactful, and you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, you're not paying attention, you can cause trauma that you didn't mean to. So I mean, double-edged sword, I suppose.
Yeah, that's something I've been really trying to pinpoint, especially in the series, is just the way coaches give feedback and understanding the psychology behind it. And in my last season 2, we skated to a song from 50 Shades of Grey. And so it was great, had a good time, had our first competition. Judges had some feedback, I guess, of the portrayal of the characters. So then it went into this spiral of changing the costumes and working on the way I was expressing emotion. And every day it was do this, do this. No, it's not right. No, it's not right. No, that's too much. That's too little. And I was like, I am trying. I think I am very expressive in like theater and like the way I was on the ice, and I just could not find that right expression. And every day it was just this battle of like, do it again, do it again. No, I don't like that. I don't like that either. And I was like, I don't know how many more faces or like
Right.
movements and gestures I can do to like express what I'm trying to put out there. And it was kind of like this continuing theme throughout the whole season, where even like halfway through I was like, I want to change programs. Like I don't know what else to do. I can't get it right. And then I'm sure that came through in my program and how the audience and the judges perceived it, and they know what to do.
And when you say you can't get it right, this is because your coach was telling you it wasn't right, not because you didn't feel it was right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
with something like expression, it's so difficult to say. Like,
Yeah, I mean, we're in a sort of separate place once you talk about that. When you get into the artsy side, I I have great respect for all of that. But I mean, I think the good coaches will be honest that it's still their opinion.
mm-hmm.
And on the artistic side, you're just appealing to hopefully the judges share your coach's opinion. I mean, if they're good, they're solving for that, right? So you're not dancing for the audience or the cameras, right? You need to make the judges happy. And if they feel that they know what that is, then fair, that they do their best. But it's hard to communicate what is the thing to the athlete when it's something like expression.
Going back towards coaching, I'm curious,
Mm.
what is your approach if you're in a lesson with someone and you feel like the dynamic's not really going well, they're kind of distracted, they're agitated? What is your go-to approach in that scenario?
Yeah, that happens. Um, it happens. That often ends in tears from one of them. Not ends in tears, but because they're not crying because I'm like mean to them. They're just, well, it's similar to what you were saying, right? On my side, uh, coaches don't know everything. They're always doing their best, and the best coaches usually are honest about that, and that's why they continue to improve at their craft. And so you're doing your best to communicate this sort of end goal. Well, you know what the end goal you're looking for is, and you're trying to walk them through those steps. And sometimes the things are a little weird, and it's hard to find words that fit that, or you get in and move their body around. And when that's not happening, not only are you frustrated, but I think one of the big problems with coaches is that cognitive bias known as the curse of knowledge. Um, that's something, well, every human suffers from, but it's particularly nefarious in the case of a teacher or a coach, because it's your job, almost by definition, your job is to tell them what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very likely that something that you've forgotten that they don't know that somewhere in the chain of information. And so you've skipped a few steps, assuming they've already got that. Little things, right? Like small, seemingly insignificant things. In fact, it is the things that seem insignificant that you don't mention and they don't know. And so you skip a few steps, you're trying to hammer this other thing through. It's missing that foundational element. And frustration happens, and then tears from frustration often happen. That can cause a bit of a shutdown, on the lesson, because they, it's hard to get the body to do something when you just continually feel like you can't do anything. So you can't do this one thing right, and the response is typically, I can't do anything right.
Yeah.
So when that's happening now, through a lot of hard, lessons over the last few decades or a couple decades, we really just go back to, okay, what is the very first movement? Let's say, like step A, right? Like we're totally beginners. This, then this, then this, and somewhere in there, we often find, oh, I was missing that you were talking about that. If you knew exactly what your coach wanted, right, you just do it. And the words are not perfect conductors of this. They don't code the information in a perfect way and then go into your ear and you decode it. So, but the answer is always more conversation, right? It's more, you try and be more thorough, you break it down more, and sometimes you can't even get to it on the time you have. That's okay, right? Like being patient about that too is part of the process. It's when you feel like it needs to get done now and you make mistakes, right? So yeah, part of a lot of things being better these days is because I've become more patient, right? More the one coach can do, like that's a good start. And if they can do most of the groundwork for things and then bring someone into it, and it becomes really high level. But I think a good coach can do all of the different, this is the mental side, emotional side, this is your cross training, this is your nutrition as a floor, right? And then if we're really lacking past that, let's bring in a nutritionist, let's bring in a psychologist and all that stuff.
So along with that topic, because that's something else that I kind of have an issue with when coaches try and give nutritional advice when they don't have the education to back it up. So in your sense, why do you feel like you would be able to provide nutritional advice to your athletes? Do you do research on your own or stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, especially in the age of the internet, right? There's very little information that can only be learned at school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, since nearly every study is published also online, you can in some ways, like I know a few coaches who know more about one particular avenue of like foot mechanics than a physical therapist does, because they've done a huge amount of study on it, right? And them not having the certification, the paper that says they graduated a course, doesn't speak to them actually be able to provide effective advice. And then they of course, you will look at their track record of their people they worked with, and you've got a long line of people who are attesting to the efficacy of their suggestion and the help they provided to those people. And I would say from the outside that would convince me, as someone, if I was trying to figure out where to go, someone who just graduated from school, who has studied, but maybe not so much in the field experience, or someone who has a lot of in the field experience and a number of successes. I'd be willing to accept that as a qualification. So again, like I was saying earlier, coaches need to be honest though about what they don't know, because they don't know everything. And so when it comes to an athlete who, like, there are a few things that are pretty simple to start. If you want to be developing muscle, you need protein. Like, I don't think that anyone needs to go to school for that, right? And there's, suggestions online, whether you want 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight or whatever it is, right? And you need to rest, right? And then there are a lot of studies on optimal rest for athletes and all these things. So there's part of it can just be saying to the athlete, this is where you want to look to find the information you need, because those are the exact same things that the experts are going to refer you to or draw from as the basis of their suggestions anyway. So, and that's why I say, like, I think a good coach can get you a solid floor, right? Like, okay, you're a new dancer, you're getting serious. Okay, this normal work, this work, come and dance and go home life has to be changed a little bit because you're putting your body through too much. You need more time to recover, right? Not so difficult, right? So the base suggestions in getting you into sort of an athlete's mindset of, training and nutrition and all that. Now, when it comes to like micronutrients, stuff like that, like how much vitamin D are you having, and iron, for girls,
Mhm.
based on whatever. That's not
Yeah.
something I would ever say that I would advise on that, right? And so, but then I think a lot of coaches would then pretend like, oh yeah, I know, because I saw a thing on TV, or I read a thing, right? And maybe they do. And if they did read something, to say that I read this thing and it said this, that's fair. But again, it's worth saying that go look into it yourself. These are some good resources that I found, and find an expert. I think the real thing coaches should do is sort of teach you how to be good at finding good information and being discerning. But yeah, I think anyone that pretends that they spent their whole life teaching dancing, in my perspective, or in my case, and that somehow that makes me an expert on hormones. I think oftentimes with athletes, the real benefit, the real value is just putting that on their radar, that these are things worth thinking about. And as far as their contribution to your performance or your growth or your career, when they become relevant, if it's something specialized, something you can't find on your own, this is how we go about finding the right person to help you. Because it's not helpful for me to try and learn it all either. Like, I don't have the time. My time is better spent building you up, in the way that I do.
I think if we had a lot more skating coaches the way that you coach, we would have a lot smaller tendencies of girls having eating disorders. Because if there was a buy-in, if I saw that my coach or the coach I'm going to has a lot of athletes who are happy with their weight, healthy with their eating habits, I'd be like, all right, cool. Tell me whatever it is you want to tell me. The case is that a lot of coaches all over the country have girls who are, starving themselves, eating incorrectly because, and when I was starting out, I had a coach that would just come and pinch me. She's like, if I can grab it, there's too much there, lose weight. And I was like, how? Like, I don't understand. They're not putting like words in their mouth, but I don't think a lot of them even like look into studies or anything. They just say the first thing that like they know that they maybe had experience with, but it's not anything that's backed by science. So I think like if they were to go about it how you do, as in like laying a foundational base of knowledge that they got, if not from an educational system and a certification, but from research studies that have been proven, then that's fine. And then to provide the information of, this is the people around you who can help you. These are the qualified nutritionists. These are the certifications that you should look into. This is the professional experience that you should look into. And if they have all of this, then I would say they're a pretty safe bet to, go find that help with. But
I recommend a lot of books. So I'll send them studies, books. I'm always suggesting, like, for you, where you are, you need to read this book. I mean, a lot of it is because I've consumed so much myself, because I'm aware of my own ignorance, right? It's nearly infinite. So then when it comes up, I can at least point them to that resource. And you know how it is, one resource leads to another. And then once they're on that path, they sort of, because they know oftentimes kind of closer to, like, for instance, eating disorders, right? That's not a nutrition problem in my experience. It's a psychology problem. It's why does, because what would you say to a coach who says, well, I'm not trying to say that like your value as a human is how you look, but this is an aesthetic sport at the worst case. So that needs to be addressed in some way. But in another way, especially in what you're doing, weight to power ratios matter.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have a way, and this comes usually between the relationship between coach and an athlete, right? It's like, if you set something up where you can be honest with each other and you feel safe, right? Like, the athlete feels safe to tell the coach like something that they don't think the coach wants to hear. But if you won't tell me, I can't help you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sort of aggressive sort of relationship that you're talking about that some coaches have, where people are scared of their coach, not helpful in that way. And then, but I have to feel safe as a coach too, that we can have an honest conversation when there's a problem about, not that we even know the answer yet, but I have to be able to say, I think we're outside of the range of where we need to be and you're getting tired sooner than you would if we didn't make these changes. So let's say someone is overweight in an obvious way, right? And so, and for the level they were dancing at prior, maybe they were just a beginner, it was okay. And I mean, like medically, where we would say they qualify as overweight, and you can
Yeah.
still dance, right? It's not that we're talking about. Do you care about your results? You care about dancing in the best, most efficient way of using your energy. It's not using extra energy that you don't need to, and optimizing in all that way. If we do care about that, then we can't pretend like this isn't an issue. But again, I don't want to say something where you, in a worst case, develop an eating disorder, and that's hard. That's hard because you don't know what's going to trigger someone again, right? Like, and so that's why I spend a lot of time talking with about all sorts of things, right? Because you want to establish trust if you can, and that they feel safe to say, look, I don't know how to stop. I get Cheetos every night on the way home. One of my students said to me last week, she goes, I don't want to see you coming to the studio with a can of Coke every time. Because she's a little older, I think, and she's like, I'm addicted to Coke. She's got to have her Coke Zero or Diet Coke, and in rare cases a regular Coke, but she's got to have one a day or else it doesn't feel like a good day, right? I'm like, it's just not helping. I get of the addictions you can have, that's probably not that bad. But maybe we slowly stop that, right? It's a small thing, it's not helping you. We don't know. And so she comes into a lesson late, 10 minutes late, a couple of days later. And I said, I don't normally care. It's not a big deal, 10 minutes late. She goes, okay, before we start the lesson, I got to tell you something. I'm late because I had to pull over and go into Walgreens and get a Coke. And first of all, I was like a little annoyed, and I thought, actually, I'm happy that we have whatever it is that you feel you can tell me that.
Yeah.
Because again, we can talk about it, right? The second you're scared, that's when you start hiding and you start developing these weird things, and you don't want that. Well, I'll put it back to you. So what is the aesthetic sort of comments you were getting? Like what they would pinch you, and they would say like, until I can pinch this much or some, how unscientific though? Like,
Yeah,
what are
well,
they, like human calipers? What are they like?
technically there is the skinful test, which is an accurate way of assessing how much.
Yeah, but it's a caliper. So it's
Yeah,
a real
it's not
thing.
just like you go and I mean, if you grab something, there's going to be something to grab. No
Yeah.
matter
Did they
how.
pinch you in 7 spots and all the right spots? And they're like, I've done this 1,000 times, so I have a good feel for it. I might say, okay. So they're just pinching your what?
Yeah.
Pinching your side and being like,
I got some pinching. I got some just general comments of you don't look a certain way. Performing a ballet program, you have to look like a ballerina. Got a little bit of comments later on of you're too skinny. Not anything that I could really take and say, okay, I now know what to do to improve and to fix it. It was just a general, we're going to throw this information at you and you do with it as you wish. And I think that's kind of where.
so they would do that, and then that's suggesting your body fat is too high, and by their assertion, and you should fix it.
Yes.
I see. Well, that's I would say that's rather uncoachly. But okay, so again, let's put ourselves in the coach's shoes. If they had athlete A prior, right? And because of whatever genetic predisposition they have and family structure and diet and whatever it is, they could say just that to them, and maybe that person makes the adjustments. By the way, you could make the exact same adjustments as them and have completely different results, right? But let's say they did with that what the coach wanted, and that they came back and after some time they were the right size.
Mm-hmm.
That does, from the coach's experience, suggest that this is enough. And it's almost confirmation bias in a way, in that like, well, the ones who are serious do the thing. Yeah, but a lot of people get left out because they don't know exactly how to get that done, or they go the wrong path, right? And again, they're not in communication. Like, would you talk to your coach much outside of the
No.
lessons or whatever?
Then my coach was there probably like 8-10 hours a day. Like, I understand you're exhausted, I'm exhausted, like you should go rest. But it was kind of like, you come into the ring, you do your job, you leave the rink, that's it. The only time you have a meeting is when something's really gone wrong. You have like
Yeah.
a sit down chat with like multiple coaches and like you and your partner, and you're just like, oh shit.
But you're in trouble at that point already.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah.
never really like a let's just hang out, you know, understand each other, have this like friendship. Like I don't think I would ever come to my coach and say like I think like I have a problem with like this and this. Like even when you're injured, I was like, oh my God, like if I'm injured, he's gonna send me off the ice. He's gonna be mad. I don't want that to happen. So I'm just gonna like hope I'm okay.
Yet at the same time, as we started, you're referring to the coach as almost like a family member.
Yeah, it's true. It's I think they're a family member in the sense that you greatly value their opinion as you would your parents. You kind of you want to please them, you want to do everything they tell you to, and you feel like you have this connection with them because you see them every day for however many years,
Yeah.
and they've gone through these obstacles with you. But there is, like you said, that little like, oh well, I'm not really close enough with you.
Yeah.
Like come
That
to
wall.
something really deep and personal. Like I'm really truly upset about something. Do I feel like I can be like, hey, you know, I'm upset about A, B, and C, and I'm probably not gonna have a productive session. So like just letting you know, maybe take it a little easy on me today. Like things might not go to plan. I don't think I would ever say that.
It's a fine line to walk, because there are some times where in needing to know more about an athlete, right? So I like to know more ahead of time so that I don't have to have that big like things just exploded, you're falling apart talk, and everyone gets together and it's like that show Intervention or whatever of some sort, and everyone's crying. So I feel that the more information I have on what makes the athlete tick, the more likely I can slowly, can navigate this crazy thing we're about to undertake. If it's years long, decades long in our case, because you can compete for a long time without knowing as much as I can. I just don't see how I can do my job to the best of my ability. If the more I know about you, the better I'm equipped to help you. I don't see a way to get there other than us, over time having, pretty regular check-ins on where's your head, where's your, what's your life.
I think that if you had like regular check-ins, like quarterly check-ins, same as you would have in a company, right?
Exactly.
You wanna sit, you wanna get the feel, what's going on, what's the vibe, what's the feedback, how can I improve, what do you like, what do you not like? I think that's a really good way of going about it. And if you don't have time for that, if I was a coach, I would even like it's kind of impersonal, but I would just like send a questionnaire. Be like, please fill this out. Like, what can I do to better you? We don't have the time to chat and whatnot. If I have like 50 athletes, like, what can I do to help you? And just to understand, how are you feeling with me?
I think a lot of people will be surprised how little it takes, actually, and how encouraging it is as a dancer. How little encouragement you need from the coach, right? Like 10 minutes once every quarter. It's not 50 athletes. You can find the time, I think, as a coach. If you're serious, like as a coach too, if you want to be the best, how the hell are you supposed to do that when you're like, okay, it's done, I'm clocking out, right? Because that's what everyone else is doing. So, I mean, to the other coaches, right? If you don't do more, how are you supposed to get more out of your athletes than the other guy? There's just no way, especially if you're starting and you're coming in against someone who's established. You've got to make up the difference of the thousands and tens of thousands of hours they have.
Yeah.
And that's just going to be an extra work you do, because you need, well, your athletes need the time, but you need the time to figure yourself out and your way of doing things. And yeah, I think, like you said, just like a meeting, like what meeting do you have where you have the one person coming down and telling them what to do, barking orders, that you don't have really a check-in to see like, hey, human, other person, where's your head at, right? And we take the successes, like the champions who were these, seemingly perfect robots on the outside, and we see, well, whatever they did is if that doesn't work for you, you're the failure, not the process, or not the coach.
I think you're a really good coach in how you go to a lot of different avenues to help your athletes. So you also strength and condition your athletes.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? How does that go to actually coach them in a different scene?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that if the benefits of cross training aren't obvious on their own, I mean, if you look at Michael Phelps spending a huge amount of time in the gym and doing Pilates and whatever, he's not stupid. Like you would think, well, why doesn't he just swim some more? Because at some point, swimming alone can't get you the benefit you're looking for. If you think of dance as obviously a form of athletics, you might not call it a sport, though the people on the dance sport side of things would get upset at me for that. But you're certainly trying to build a strong machine to do the task, whatever it is. Then we know that your muscles, you're not going to get into hypertrophy through, unless you've got like some serious overload. And in a way, it's good to get in the gym and put some force into your body. And part of the reason I started thinking about that is that I had come from a background of that. I was doing martial arts. I was surfing. My dad was a track and field guy, and he had me training since I was like 8. In fact, probably unhealthily so. My dad would always say, how many pull-ups can you do? Can you do more than me? So we'd go do pull-ups, and if I couldn't, then we'd go do back exercises and crunches and, Rocky training in the backyard. And I think the reason why when I started being serious about dancing, I was able to pass people wasn't because I was like I had a talent or like my brain was better, maybe, I don't know. But I was certainly physically in a different place, right? And I would attribute some of your early ease of learning ballroom dancing from what I saw when you were young, probably right, because of the gymnastics stuff. You weren't coming in off the street with an off the street body and machine. You were coming with something that, while not calibrated for dancing, your proprioception was different, your strength was different, right? Your stamina was different. And so the cues your brain gives your body come out very differently from someone who doesn't have that. And so I just started experimenting, quite a while ago, and saying, let's go to the gym. And I was, again, the curse of knowledge. I assumed this person knew what a pull-up was or a squat was. Like no one knew. What's a bench press? That's what people talk about in the movies to show how strong they are. Why do I need to do a bench press? Why do I need to do a squat? This sucks. I just want to dance, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, and then putting them through and getting them interested. Like, look, today you moved this much weight. Next week you moved this much weight. That's great. I feel good about myself. I feel like, hey, I feel strong. I can overcome stuff. There's a huge psychological component to it that even if without the physical benefits, I would suggest they go just to feel like, that last rep they push through, like, it was about to drop it. I pushed through. Oh, I'm stronger than I thought. Right. That's huge, I think, for a lot of people. I just started doing that because why should dancing be any different from any other avenue where you're trying to develop the best possible machine for doing the thing? And calling it a gym is even, I think, a distraction. It's just a place where we can think about, I need my body to do this one thing. Probably for it to do that better, it should be stronger. A strong body is a better body for the most part. And if I need to do something, just lift my arm up. A stronger shoulder is probably going to be better than not. How do we do that? We could just lift our arm up a bunch. The fast way is to load it up with some weight and do that, eat a steak and go to sleep. And then we've got to spend time, I don't know if you've had this happen where when you first start training, you get stronger faster than you do later, right? And a lot of those gains early on are neuromuscular, right? Your myosin sheaths are getting more thicker, so the electric signals going down your nerve endings are more productive. And so you get like stronger, but you're more coordinated, really, right? Like more of the information is going down, so your muscles are better at that. So it's strength, not through just bigger muscles.
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with what you said and your approach to it, because that's how I feel. I mean, you take any other sport, they're going to go into the gym and work on their bodies because they want to be stronger. They want to be the best athletes that they can be. So why do dance sports have to be an exception? I felt like that with ice dancing. A lot of the girls were like, well, I'm not the one lifting. My partner's lifting me. I just have to look pretty. I have to look lean. And like, I can already get through my programs because we do conditioning on the ice. So why do I need to go in the gym? It's just going to make me look bulky and I'm going to be heavier. Like, that's just the wrong mindset to go about it. And I just felt like there was a lack of education in why this is being done, why this is important for your athletic ability.
It's a fair question for someone to ask. I would still suggest that person to give it a shot and see if
How is
maybe,
it better?
yeah, they could be better, right? Like, and I think it's a little closed-minded to say like, well, I'll just do what I'm doing because it's already working. Like, it's not bad. Like, okay, yeah, if you are the champion and this is working, who am I to say no? But you might want to give it a shot at least and see if you, because again, like you're saying, there's lots of data that suggests for most people it's really great, it's really beneficial. So why would you just brush that aside? Yeah.
I like your perspective because it's very interesting for me, and I'm sure other people watching this, to just see how a coach goes about it, even though it may be a different realm of athletics. At the end of the day, all coaches are coaches. They're all trying to just get you through it and put their knowledge onto you and try and help you excel in whatever it is that you wish.
Yeah. Can I turn it back on you for a second? What do you think would have been, because you don't want your coach to not tell you that they think you could make some changes, let's say.
Mhm.
But what would have been a better process, or what do you think if you? I'm not sure if you've thought about it. Like what could they have said? You know, what would you say different to if you were responsible for having that conversation on the other side with a young athlete?
I am not opposed to critical feedback. I take it pretty well. I understand that it's the nature of the sport. Sometimes you have to look a certain way, you need to look a certain way for performance. I don't do well when someone tells me, fix this. Okay, how do I fix it?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just telling you to fix it. I appreciate when there is a solution that is also brought to my attention.
I'm sorry. Excuse my French, but are you fucking kidding me? Just fix this.
Or yeah, so I
10 people could have told me that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh,
I need
stop falling over. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I didn't know.
That's like when someone tells you, "Don't be sad."
Don't be sad. Yeah.
I mean, how can I? I'm sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
Fix
I
it.
think it just the best way to go about it from a coach is perspective is to provide a solution or say, "I would like you to lose weight. Here is a website you can
Plan.
go to look at nutritionists. Here's the phone number of a nutritionist. Cool. I will go and happily do it in a good way. I don't need lose weight. By the way, don't eat any carbs and only eat
Ugh.
at night." Because then I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I don't know any better. And I don't want to challenge your opinion or question it. Maybe I don't have the ability to question it because I don't know anything else. And then you get in
Did
the,
your coach not? I mean, again, I don't want to make this personal against your coach, but did they not say like, "Hey, go read this book, read about that, learn about this"?
it's
No.
spiritual of it.
I see. I see.
So I think that's where things just get blurry and a lot of problems could be very easily avoided without misinformation. If you don't have the information, that's fine. But tell me where to find it. Give me a resource. What would be your closing statement for athletes in, let's say, they desire to build a better connection with their coach? What would be your advice from a coach's side?
Well, I do know this. Len Goodman, actually, I don't know if you know him from Dancing with the Stars. So before he was on that show, at some point he was giving a lecture at Blackpool. Blackpool is our big event. Like it's the thing everyone wants to win one day. It's the oldest competition in the world in a town called Blackpool in England. Anyway, so he's doing a lecture there, and to be invited to this congress is a big deal. So he's talking, and he's like, if I know one thing that you want to do as a student, you want to be your coach's star student.
Mm.
You want your coach to like you, and you want your coach to like you more than everyone else, if you can, especially if they're, a normal person, that you tend to work harder for people you like and you care about them more, and you might send that extra text after to check on them because you like them. You also need to be able to question your coach and not necessarily come off as you're doubting their authority, because then that doesn't make any sense. If you don't accept them as an authority, why do you have them as your coach? But you want a way to discuss maybe something you read, or present them with new information, or tell them just what's going on with you in a way that's making it hard to maybe achieve the result that you're looking for. So you want an open dialogue, I think. And sometimes in the process of doing that, that can, for coaches that need to be these mighty, deific, divine figures, and you could never question them, then that's going to be hard. Yeah. And that's hard too, because sometimes those guys are also the best at the job. So yeah. So as far as like tactical tips to getting that done, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I talk to people a lot, right? Because I need to figure that out with them. If you're in a lucky position where you have an option between a few coaches that are all pretty good, then you want to pick the one that seems like it's more likely that you can build a relationship with that coach and be able to kind of go through that with. But I'm starting from the position that it shouldn't be so difficult, though I'm hearing from you that maybe sometimes it is. Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, I think coaches should be better. It's tough. Keep trying to learn more, assuming you never know enough.
Well, thank you for this chat. I think it was really insightful and really good to hear what I would say would be like a really good role model for a lot of coaches, the way that you approach things. So I hope that this chat could open the eyes of any coaches who are watching of any sport and all athletes, just to see what maybe their coach isn't doing and compare and try and propose different methods and how to speak. Maybe propose a sit down little quarterly review, see how things are going. I think that's actually a really big takeaway from this, and just to feel like you are open and able to talk to your coach about really whatever it is.
Well, it was a pleasure. All right, well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who is watching this chat, and I hope you enjoyed. Check out Ikaika's podcast called Framework.
Yeah, the framework. We talk about dancing, but we also talked about other experts and other things. Podiatrists, on foot health, and I think another orthopedic surgeon and who specializes with dancers, and sports psychologist as well, like PTs, and then a lot of ballroom dancing stuff. So if you're not into that, you can skip those episodes. But
definitely very interesting stuff. I mean, I've listened to a couple of them myself and I really enjoyed them. So go ahead and check that out and stay tuned for more Women in Athletics videos.
yeah, congratulations on this podcast. I'm glad you're doing it.